Greetings, I'm Dr. Sean Reed, and today I want to talk about the fact that you cannot get good relationship advice from academia. You cannot get good advice from traditional psychologists and psychiatrists. Watch today's video and I will tell you where you can get good relationship advice. There are 3 places. At the end of the video, I will tell you where those places are and how you can get better with dating, relationships, seduction, and getting women, high quality women, to love you and stay in love with you. Okay, so let's first talk about the academic world a little bit. Psychologists love to write books about relationships. Supposedly, having better relationships is the domain of academia, of psychology. But unfortunately, most of the material in there is terrible. It does not work. Let's unpack a little bit of that and let's understand why you cannot get good relationship advice from traditional psychology. Okay, first thing you need to understand, and by the way, I spent most of my life in the academic world, more than a decade getting a BA, I have a master's, I have a PhD, I spent 12, 13 years teaching. So I was deeply immersed in the academic world. I know a little bit about it. And something I will tell you is that it's extremely politically far to the left. Personally, I never had a problem with that. I myself am very moderate. I'm not some far right winger. As a matter of fact, I voted Democrat way more times than I've only voted Republican a couple of times. But I will tell you that the academic world is very, very far to the left. As a matter of fact, if we look at psychologists, if we take 31 psychologists, 30 of them are extremely liberal, most of them are feminists, and only one could be defined as conservative. So, and other disciplines are similar. There are a few fields like maybe economics where it might be a little bit different, but academia is dominated by the far left. And when it comes to relationships, the problem you have in academia is they have a political agenda. That political agenda is men and women are identical. There are no differences between men and women. And because of that, they're incapable of coming up with good relationship advice. Why? Because men and women are different. I'm sorry to tell you, but that is a fact. Okay, so men and women are different. The academic world refuses to recognize that. And my big thesis is, unless you understand the female brain, you'll never understand relationships, and your relationships will be doomed to an unending cycle of desperation and despair. So we need to understand that the brains are different. Okay, so the academic world views men and women as the same. Any kind of brain difference is called neurosexism. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Before I do, I want to go back to psychology. I argue that the most important thing in a relationship is love. More specifically, the most important thing in a relationship is the degree to which the woman loves the man. That determines everything. And the mistake a lot of guys make is they go by their emotions. Guys base their actions on how they feel. And what they don't understand is how you feel doesn't really matter. It's how the woman feels. However, the academic world, traditional psychology, views the most important thing not as love, but instead as communication. They believe that communication is the most important thing in a relationship. And yes, communication is important, but it's not the most important thing. And another problem we have in the academic world, if you look at the therapeutic model, is you have couples coming in for relationship counseling. So let's say you have 100 couples. Out of those 100 couples, and all of them are in relationships that have problems. Okay, 80 of those 100 are a situation where the woman has fallen out of love with a man. If a woman falls out of love with a man, she's not going to go to counseling. She's not going to care about counseling. What she's going to do is she's going to leave him. She's going to divorce him. So academics, couples counselors, they're only seeing those top 20% of women that are still in love with their men. Okay, so yes, in that situation, communication becomes important. But what they don't understand is that 80 out of those 100 couples, the women fell out of love. So love trumps all. It's not communication. So you've got a number of areas where the academic world is failing. One, they view men and women as the same. And two, they view communication as the most important thing when the most important thing is love. But let's return back to that question of equality, right? It's equality. Men and women are equal. Men and women are the same. If you try and argue that men and women are different, you're a sexist pig, right? So that's generally the view. And any argument that brains are different is automatically labeled as neurosexism. Okay, so if someone like me, if I argue that brains are, and matter of fact, there are a lot of now biologists and brain specialists, they're not psychologists, and they come out and they say, yes, we have MRI, we have CAT scans, we can view, in fact, how and why female and male brains are different, but they're not psychologists. Psychologists will come in and they dismiss that idea as being neurosexism. So again, the whole field of psychology, the field that's supposed to be able to help people with relationships, is just completely incapable of doing so. I talked about the differences in male, female brains before. I've talked about white matter versus gray matter. Women use more white matter, men use more gray matter. Women are process oriented, men are problem solution oriented, and that this is the result of evolution. I want to talk a little bit, since whenever I did some research again on this topic, I revisited it, and there are still feminists coming out with the argument that any brain difference is neurosexism. So I wanted to expand on my argument a little bit, and I wanted to talk about something known as myelin, or myelination axon, or myelination of nerve fibers. In your brain, nerve fibers transfer information. Women have much more myelin. Myelin, imagine that you have a wire transmitting electricity. Myelin is like the sheath around the wire that protects it. And women have more myelin. This isn't a debatable question. It's a fact. If we look at brains, we will see that women have more myelin. And what that means is their nerves have more insulation and therefore are better at transferring information. So women's brains are better at transferring information. So, the irony is that I'm arguing there's a difference here, and actually the difference favors women. I would like to say that if I try and tell some of the feminists this fact, they'll of course call me a neurosexist before I even get halfway into my argument. And the reality is that women's brains are simply better at processing information. So brains are different. Okay, I don't want to spend a whole lecture on this. I've touched on this topic many times, but evidence is overwhelming that brains are different. And we need to recognize this if we want to be able to have strong relationships. My argument is that you must understand how the female brain works if you want to be successful. That's critical. You must have this understanding. So, where do we go? Where can we get this information? Since the academic world is hostile to the fact that men and women, their brains are different. And I'll go so far as say men and women are different. Ooh, and again, I'll be called a sexist. It's so obviously overwhelmingly clear that men and women are different, but I'll be still labeled as a sexist. So the question is, where can we go to get help? Where can we as men go to learn how to have successful relationships? Well, I've got a few places, okay? One of the places we can go is the old seduction community, okay? First of all, we can look at the latest science on male and female brain differences. So we need to start operating from a position that male and female brains are different. To understand, we must develop an understanding of how the female brain works. And you'll see that all my relationship advice is based on this fact. That's why I tell men, when your wife comes home, when your girlfriend wants to talk about her day, to listen to her. That is the process-oriented brain at work. Let that process run, and your women will love you for it. That's why I do a lot of the things I do. Like I say, give your woman the gift of missing you. Why? Because women don't fall in love when you're around them. Women fall in love when you're gone and they're thinking about you. Again, they fall in love because that process is running. So you always want to encourage that process to run in women. So let's be more specific though. What are some other places where I can get help? And again, this is going to be very politically incorrect. I'm going to point you towards the old seduction community. Okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this because the seduction community has been canceled. But 25 years ago, there was a powerful seduction community. And they concentrated on, for lack of a better expression, on getting laid. So what they concentrated on was meeting women, opening women. We've talked about starting conversations, getting that woman's interest level up, enough to give you the phone number. Then once you call her, again, you raise that interest level and she gives you the date. You go out on the date, she raises that interest level, and then she becomes willing to have sex with you. Okay? Now, much of the seduction community was only concentrated on sex. And because of that, they got a bad rap and they were canceled. Cancel culture got rid of the old seduction community. But I'm telling you that the things they do and the things we learn from them are valuable. So what we want to do, what I've done in my system, is I've taken those principles of raising a woman's interest level, but what we do is we continue to do these things after we have sex. We're not just pursuing sex. I want that second, I want that third date. I want to develop a healthy relationship with a woman that loves me, right? I want to keep her in love. So the things we did initially to raise her interest level, we keep doing that until eventually she falls in love with me. And of course, this isn't something that happens overnight. I talk in my other videos about how you have to date many, many women for all this to happen. But the idea here is we use these principles of raising a woman's interest level, and over time, we find a high quality woman that falls in love with us. So basically, there are 3 places to get good relationship advice. 1, from the old seduction community. 2, from the understanding of brain differences between men and women. And 3, from yours truly, from Dr. Love, from me, Sean Reed. I will give you good relationship advice. I will help you become more successful with women.